Hey guys, what's going on? Roundedtiktak here. And before we get into the video, I'm just going to put my little preamble right here. If you guys want to help out the channel, you can subscribe. It really does help. I'm going to be covering everything Outriders. I'm not going over to Destiny when it gets a new update, or Borderlands 3, or Diablo, whatever game comes out. I'm sticking with Outriders. So if you like informative videos and full weapon guides, gear, and gameplay breakdowns, with the occasional crappy dad joke or boomer humor thrown in there, then this is the channel for you. We also stream 4 days a week over at twitch.tv/roundedtiktak if you want to come and say what's up, because you're missing content like this.
You can see it come out of the bottle. All right. Bottoms up, you sons.
With that out of the way, let's get into the video. As we inch ever closer to the release of Outriders on April 1st, I wanted to take this time to discuss something that I've been seeing since day one, a question that many people have asked me personally or within my community at some point in time, something that is probably the most important thing in a game like Outriders, something that if it isn't great, it can possibly tank their entire game, which is, again, something that I don't really want to see happen. So today, let's take a look at Outriders Endgame, what they have waiting for us, and I will give you all the information about the topic that I have from my own personal experience from playing the insider test. Although I am still under NDA, I can at least tell you what's true and what's not from the rumors you may have heard, to at least help clear up some confusion about what we have to look forward to in the endgame. But first things first, what to expect from the endgame of Outriders. Let's compare it to some of the things that I've seen many comparisons already been drawn to. Let's get the big one out of the way, and that is Destiny.
The light and dark ready themselves for a new phase. So must we.
Listen, the only thing that Outriders and Destiny have in common is that they're in space. That's really it. I mean, granted, there's a few more things, but they really aren't that similar. Oh, and Outriders might actually have the leg up in design of legendary weapons. I mean, just look at some of these things. Jesus. But if we are speaking strictly endgame material that will be available, they are vastly, vastly different. The first thing to note is that on release, Outriders is actually going to have an endgame. That hasn't happened with Destiny since, well, never. Outriders being a linear, arena-based looter shooter as compared to Destiny's more open-world, exploration-based endgame are very different. The main thing that comes to mind and is brought up a considerable amount when comparing these two is, will there be raids? If you don't know what a raid is like a dungeon on steroids. It's larger, the bosses are harder, there's usually different endgame mechanics that you have to accomplish while fighting the bosses, and all in all are usually just a more fun and difficult activity to really separate the elites from the regular players, usually. But I'm going to tell you, at the moment, there will be no raids, no 6-person dungeons or anything of that nature. The devs have stated before and on multiple occasions that for a very long time, they toyed with the maximum amount of people that should be in a party at one time. And they said they just kept coming back to 3. Anything else, the game gets too crazy. Imagine 6 people casting thermal bomb or bullet reflect all at one time. Most likely, it would crash the game. On top of that, the game really isn't set up for any kind of raid type of experience. Outriders relies more on waves of enemies outnumbering you than something like Destiny, a Hive Knight, or an Ogre outplaying you and flanking you, or something along those lines. To make them challenging, the amount of enemies that would need to spawn in a raid in Outriders would have to be ramped up to ridiculous numbers, and honestly, it would probably just end up being a little absurd. So for the moment, there will not be raids. If the game is successful, maybe down the line, they might try to implement larger battles, but for right now, as far as we know, it is off the table. That doesn't mean we don't have an endgame though, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Another comparison that I've seen drawn a lot is Borderlands. I'll be the first to admit that I haven't played much Borderlands. I played a decent amount of 3 and some of 2. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but the vast majority of endgame in Borderlands is boss killing. Going in, tweaking your build, and trying to shave 1 or 2 seconds off your kill time. Again, this is not what Outriders has in store. We will not have to reload the area a million times like we're doing in the demo farming the captain to Kingdom Come. But don't worry, our endgame does have bosses. You just don't have to reload the map 1,002 times to continue to fight them. However, one comparison that is fair with Borderlands is the way DLC and expansions into Endgame will most likely be implemented. Again, this isn't a service style of game like Destiny, and much more akin to something like Borderlands DLC that they receive on a semi-regular basis. The devs have stated that if the game is successful, and with over 2 million people trying the demo over its first week, it seems to be going in the right direction. The devs have said that they would love to do DLCs. So hopefully, once everyone is just starting to fine-tune their builds and the game is successful enough, we will get some news that a new chapter in the story of Outriders of Enoch is on the way, with all new bosses, areas, loot, and of course, more expeditions. And what are expeditions? Well, this is our endgame, and I have played it firsthand, so I can give you an idea of what you can expect and experience and what you might see. As the devs have said, the expeditions are going to be tough. They're going to be difficult. As they go up in difficulty and you go up in world tier, they will become very, very hard to complete. We have 14 expeditions at the moment, and every single one of them is a map that was not in the campaign. They are brand new maps, never before seen, although they are probably influenced from a previous area. Expeditions are giant arenas filled with the toughest enemies Enoch has to offer. They turn the enemy amount up to 11 and really begin to test your mettle and just how strong your build actually is. In the insider playtest that I had a chance to play, I ended the campaign on World Tier 11. I never even got to World Tier 15, and the few expeditions I did get to participate in really shook my build to the core. Granted, my playtime was limited and my gear basically consisted of whatever had higher stats than my previous gear that I found on the ground, but I can attest to the fact that they are difficult to complete in the allotted time. And that's the thing, they are timed. That is going to be a large part of the end game grind, especially on the content creator front, such as YouTube and Twitch. Who can complete certain expeditions the fastest or the quickest? These are the things that are really going to drive end game builds. The reason you want to try to complete them as fast as possible is because depending on how fast you do complete them, that is what kind of reward and how much loot you will receive at the end. So if time trials is something you're into, then Outriders is definitely going to scratch that itch. I guarantee it from self-experience. Also, during my playtime, having the timer over your head when you're trying to finish off the last room of an expedition and you only have 20 seconds left on the clock to finish the area, but one more packs of enemies come in, it's heart racing. Trying to get your kill times down to actually get a better chance at better rewards is much better than shaving 2 seconds off of your kill time just for the sake of it. In this aspect, I think Outriders has done at least the first iteration of their endgame pretty well. It's different, difficult, and most importantly, it's fun. But this video couldn't be talking about endgame if we aren't talking about loot. If you've been following any other channel or YouTube or Reddit or Twitch or whatever, I have no doubt you have seen the mass amount of loot and armor that has been leaked throughout the game, from data mining cheat codes, hacks, and whatnot. So let me tell you about the loot in the endgame. In expeditions, enemies do not drop loot. Instead, all of those possible drops are accumulated into a chest that will open once the last enemy dies.
And this couldn't be an Outriders endgame video without talking about the modding system. As I said in my last video, I'll be the first to admit that Outriders messed some stuff up. How the characters move or with the cover system. The game is rough around the edges, but what they seem to have nailed unequivocally is the loot system. And with the loot system, they have the modding and crafting system. And with that provides countless and almost endless builds and ideas and things that you can make and manipulate to get it exactly how you want it. With this crafting and modding system in the game, you have so many tools at your disposal, whether you want to have a crit stacking build and just do a ton of damage, or you want to be the tank for your team when you get into that Eye of the Storm, or when you want to play as a pyromancer and just do long range AoE spell casting. All of this is available to you within this crafting system. On top of that, part of the late game grind for weapons and gear is going to be those white passive perks. You can see them on some of these info cards. They are randomly rolled, and although you can use shards to up those stats, I'm assuming that you can't do it all the way to max. Therefore, you are going to need higher end drops. So even if you do get a Golem's Limb or a Bad Juju or the Voodoo Matchmaker, whatever weapon you may not have the best rolls on them. So you're going to have to get another one. Eventually, you'll find one that you can roll to max, and there you go, you have a completed weapon. On top of that, if you do not like the second mod or even the tier 3 mod that comes with the weapon, you can always take it off and change it. This is a huge point in replayability for Outriders, and it's definitely something you have to mention when you're talking about endgame. This loot is based off the time in which you complete the expedition as a whole. That is why shaving off a few seconds off of your time is important. It makes the final chest better and more rewarding experience every time your completion time is just a little bit lower. Currently, there are 3 tiers of rewards: bronze, silver, and gold. Again, during my playtime, I barely made gold once, just one time, and I barely made it. I mean, like 1 second away from dropping tier down to silver. Again, my gear was basically absolute shit, and I was only on world tier 11, but it was challenging nonetheless. So, we have compared the game to the most common comparisons, such as Destiny and Borderlands. I know there are plenty more, but for longevity's sake, we will just leave it at there. We talked about the expeditions, what they are, and how you can increase their difficulty with your world tiers. We talked about the rewards and the time trials and how they change what rewards you get from the final chest. And really, that is a brief summary of what you can expect in the endgame. But wait, there is one more thing. The Eye of the Storm. This is the 15th zone in Expeditions, and currently there is basically nothing known about it. If there was to be a raid in the release of Outriders, this would be it. The devs claim that it is for the best of the best, and only the most elite will be able to actually complete the final zone. If there was to be some sort of raid event or larger group activity, this is it. This is what you're tweaking your build for, and I absolutely cannot wait. Just to add a little anecdote, here is something that I did witness about the endgame. I was browsing Twitch one day and came across a hacker. He was on world tier 15, had all purples, and was farming the captain because he couldn't hack past Act 1. But his gear was actually on par with what you would have in world tier 15. All epics, all legendaries. I watched him for a little while and I started to notice something. At least 1 out of, 3 times, the captain would slap this man down. He couldn't kill him on repeat like we do in the demo, which I found kind of promising, and here's why. Again, this hacker had all purples, all legendaries on world tier 15, fighting what I wouldn't even be considered a mini boss, and absolutely getting wrecked. These are the first iteration of captains, the first time anything remotely tanky has come across our path. Just imagine what might be waiting for us later in the game. When I played the insider test, I got to world tier 11. I never even got to world tier 15. So I can only imagine how hard it's going to get. And you know what? I'm on board. Sign me the fuck up. If that's what you can expect in the end game, the most dedicated, the most rewarding, and occasionally getting my ass kicked, I'm all in. Thank you guys so much for watching. I cannot express to you how excited I am for Outriders in about 14 days. I cannot wait to play this. If you like this kind of content and want to see more, think about subscribing, give the channel a like. It really does help out in the whole algorithm thing of YouTube. I plan on being here for a long time. And lastly, once again, if you guys want to stop over at twitch.tv/Roundedtiktak, we would love to see you there. I stream 4 days a week and it's a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. Are you excited for Endgame? I know I am. I'll see you guys on the next one. Tic Tac out.